Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Symposium on Culture, Diversity, Identity and Nationhood, Malaysian Perspectives. We'll begin in a couple of minutes. I therefore would like to invite you to take your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are about to begin shortly. We would like to request that you have your mobile phones and other electronic devices switched off or placed on silent mode throughout the speeches and presentations. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Symposium on Culture, Diversity, Identity and Nationhood, Malaysian Perspectives. This symposium is a collaborative effort between Catholic Research Centre and Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. It is now my pleasure to call upon Associate Professor Dr. Shanthini Pillai from UKM's Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities to deliver her welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Jennifer. A very good morning, everyone. I'm really sorry for the, I think you would have had some traffic disturbance at the entrance. A lot of events going on this morning in UKM, but we thank you for coming for this event. A very good morning and a very warm welcome to Distinguished Professor Datuk Dr. Shamsul Amri Baharuddin, Founding Director, Institute of Ethnic Studies, KITA, UKM. Reverend Dr. Clarence Devadas, Director, Catholic Research Centre of the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur, distinguished panel of guest speakers, participants, and the organising committee of this symposium on cultural diversity, identity and nationhood, Malaysian Perspectives. The issue of cultural diversity and identity are crucial elements in the act of nation building, especially so in a multi-ethnic country such as Malaysia. The attitudes, the actions, and most significantly, the interactions and engagements that shape the relationship between various cultural communities within Malaysia are fundamental to its well-being. For embedded in each engagement are the attendant issues of identity and belonging. Where there is engagement, the space for nation building becomes productive, especially when the threads of diversity and inclusion are woven into the tapestry of Malaysian experience. As much as we hear of dissenting voices ever so often, a chord far outweighs the tensions. The lineup of distinguished speakers that we will hear from today, congregating in this great hall to deliberate on matters of cultural diversity, identity, and nationhood through their own Malaysian perspectives, is testimony of the many spaces for dialogue that this nation affords us. Every participant gathered in this symposium also attests to the overarching willingness to listen and to partake in such conversations, another great feature of our nation. Consequently, the format that we have chosen for this symposium mirrors the dialogical in various ways. The keynote address that distinguished Professor Datuk Dr. Shamsul Amri Baharuddin will deliver today will take us through the macro levels of diversity and engagement and on global platforms as well. We will then move on to featured specialist talks by both academics and practitioners of the arts, where you will have the opportunity to witness the ways in which artistic mediums of expressions, mainly film, music, architecture, and visual arts, engage with and demonstrate diversity in Malaysia. The world of the arts offers so much room for engagement with the multivariate realities of a nation through diverse constructions of its people, its history, and its multifaceted realities. With it too are the embedded faith and convictions that we have as a multi-ethnic and multi-religious nation. It is thus fitting that we end with a forum that focuses on interfaith perspectives on diversity and Malaysian nationhood, of the bridges that are created between faith, ethnicity, and ultimately national culture. The last is especially relevant to us, the organizing committee, as the idea for the symposium grew from the findings of an ongoing joint venture research project between us at National University of Malaysia and the Catholic Research Centre of the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, that investigates cultural diversity among Malaysian Catholics. As we proceeded to gather data from various sources across the peninsula, we found ourselves peering into what was a remarkably eclectic space, reflecting the very nuances that mark the symposium today, of communal dialogue and engagement through sonicscapes, cultural materiality, and the built environment. While we have prepared a research poster of our findings that you may have noticed at the entrance to this hall, and that is also included in your program book, I would like to share with you the fluid geoscapes of diversity that we encountered in the course of our research in a multimedia presentation that captures the spirit of the multi-ethnic composition of the Malaysian Catholic community, of the pliable boundaries of cultural encounters and engagements, and the avenues for engagement and understanding through inclusion rather than exclusion as it thrives in multi-ethnic environments. We'll just begin again shortly. Nice. Thank you, Angeline. You would have noticed at every slide there would be engagements with diversity in the Catholic Church and the community. I would now like to take this opportunity to thank the committee members for their steady and unwavering support in the organization of this symposium. Theirs has been a dedication of the highest order, and I'm privileged to have been part of such a dynamic team. They are Dr. Melissa Shamni Perry from UCAM. Melissa, if you could please, at the back, that's Melissa. Dr. Pauline Leong from Sunway University, Dr. Pauline. And Miss Angeline Wong from University Tunku Abdul Rahman, Utah. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this symposium was planned and executed by the four of us with the overwhelming support of our generous grant benefactor and research collaborator, Reverend Dr. Clarence Devadas, Director of the Catholic Research Center. Thank you, Father Clarence. I would also like to thank Ms. Jennifer Pun, our MC, for the day, and an undergraduate at the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. Jennifer was, in fact, one of our very first research assistants of this project and has been a constant source of support with her ever willingness to assist in whatever way possible. I'm also grateful for the support received from the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, UKM, for the use of the Dewan Perdana, Prasarana UKM for delivering all material requested for the event, and Bahagian Traffic UKM for assisting with traffic direction to the event. Last but certainly not least, I would like to thank our student volunteers who you'd have seen and met at the registration desk, who will be assisting us with photography. If you encounter them with their phones held up for a snapshot, do cooperate by offering them your brightest and best smile. With this, I wish you a fruitful experience at this symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shanthini, for a warm welcoming speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with the keynote address of the symposium to be delivered by distinguished Professor Datuk Shamsul Amri Baharuddin, Founding Director, Institute of Ethnic Studies, KITA, UKM. But first, do let me introduce distinguished Professor Datuk Dr. Shamsul, who is one of the only 5 distinguished professors in Malaysia to date. Currently, he is Deputy Chair, National Council of Professors, Malaysia, and the Pro Team Chair, Academy of Social Sciences and Humanities, Malaysia. In 2016, he was appointed by the Prime Minister of Malaysia as a member of the National Science Council, Malaysia. He also sits on the International Advisory Panel, Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Singapore. Distinguished Professor Datuk Dr. Shamsul is the leading architect of Malaysia National Unity Blueprint 2015. On 24th April 2018, he was elected and induced as a Fellow of the Academy of Science Malaysia, one of the only 7 social scientists to have been bestowed with that honor by the elite community of scientists in the country. Trained as a social anthropologist in Malaysia and Australia, he has researched, lectured, and published extensively on the theme Economic Development, Culture and Politics, with an empirical focus on maritime Southeast Asia and Malaysia. He is often consulted by the public and private sectors on matters in the field of risk studies, and frequently comments on the local and international mass media on history and current affairs of the region. In 2008, he was awarded by the prestigious academic prize, Fukuoka Culture Award, Japan, for promoting Asian studies globally. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to call upon Prof. Oolong, Founding Director, Institute of Ethnic Studies, KITA, UKM, to deliver his keynote address for this symposium.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you didn't join the cyclists, huh? And I was lucky to escape the cyclists. I must thank Shanthini for this honor that she gave me to come and share my experience. I'm not here giving a lecture. I'm just sharing my 40 years experience working on this subject matter. I joined UKM in May 1976. This is my lecture room. I have 800 students at that time. But now they have reduced arts to 40% of the university public. The other 60 are scientists. So that's why this room looks very large now, because very little students. Yeah. So what I want to present today is some of the work that I have done on some themes relating to the main theme of this symposium. Yeah? We are looking at cultural diversity, identity, and nationhood, Malaysian perspective, because I would like to say again Malaysian perspective, because I was asked this question a couple of weeks ago somewhere in Beijing. They asked me, you have an election, why there is no violence? How can I answer that question? Because they said there are 9 other countries having election the same year, all got violence, they said. Somebody dead somewhere. So it's very difficult to explain when we are peaceful. But it's so easy to explain why we quarrel. Because we can point fingers to somebody. But successful, we don't want to give credit to anybody. So I think that is the greatness about us. We don't like to praise ourselves. We criticize ourselves quite a lot. But that criticism actually took us very far, I think, in some ways. People don't realize criticizing is very good, but we don't teach our children how to criticize us. So I'd like to share what I have done in the last couple of years relating to this topic with friends from different countries around the world who are interested in what I have been doing quietly in Malaysia, because quietly in the sense that research funds are only available where there's trouble in a country, especially when there's a crisis. So you see, and when the Vietnam War, suddenly Southeast Asian studies is very popular. Millions of dollars are spent by US government on Southeast Asian studies. Now they are closing all the Southeast Asian department because to build West Asian department or Middle Eastern department. So it's quite interesting how this so-called neutral, truthful academic world is manipulated by global politics all the time. Yeah? So now whoever study terrorists, not that they will become terrorists, but there are plenty of money for those who want to study terrorists. You ask Superintendent Ayub or whatever his rank is, he got a lot of funds to give away. But while we are thinking in terms of the issues that necessitate us to look at some of this subject matter, I find that a comparison between nations is very helpful, because otherwise we are so introvert looking at ourselves. We don't know what's happening in other places as if we are the only one. And Malaysia is the most difficult because we are so different, because our formula of existence is different. So we look at each other and compare each other in this country. And yet, some of these issues are similar to other countries. So thank God to Tony Fernandez with his AirAsia. So we start moving around and seeing other countries in this region, not because we want to see them, but because of tourism. But nevertheless, it rubs off on us. I'm quite certain it has rubbed off on us, how we see other countries. Now, all the Felda scheme people can speak of Borobudur, otherwise they don't know what is Borobudur. They only know Mecca. So it's interesting for me, the expansion of this popular knowledge is very important for us in this country to begin to understand the so-called different people who are different than we are, whether Malay, Chinese, Indian, Iban, Kadazan, because there's only a veneer of understanding, because deeper than that we know very little. From my research, I found that when I asked, explain to me, who is an Indian? The first thing they know is chapati. The next thing is a restaurant, all about food. They forgot there is Taipusam and Dipavali. They only remember the food. Because I gave them 10 seconds to answer. Because that means what immediately comes to their mind. Yeah? So it's interesting. The same way, a lot of people know the other group in a popular sense, not deeper than they may be a degree holder, PhD holder, and I'm surprised that actually they know very little about their own country. So when they introduced this compulsory course called Ethnic Relations in 2007, at that time Pak La was the Prime Minister, so he said after 50 years, a lot of us don't know about one another, but we pretend to know, he said. So that's the Prime Minister who told me that, now you have to write this textbook and all this stuff. So I said, as if I said, I asked jokingly, I said, am I getting extra salary for this? Of course, he said, you get extra salaries. You have all the salaries that you want, but we'll pay later when it's successful. So I said, I don't know, I cannot guarantee this. But this is a kind of consciousness that our leaders have. Maybe one or two, but enough to start things moving. Yeah. So this is the research that I'm interested in, that looking at what I call the long-term impact of cultural diversity, ethnicity, nationalism, and so on and so forth. These are all cliches. For me, they're not Many people don't understand what these words are, but I found them in all their speeches. Why? Because written by somebody else, especially ministers. Yeah. So my interest has always been looking at Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Fiji, and British Guiana. These are all ex-Commonwealth countries. And I think I don't include India here, because if I include India, then I'm swallowed in India, because they have a huge collection of material and also research. So I thought, let me go to the little ones, as big as Malaysian size, Fiji. Then I went there to see rugby, not to see very much about what they do. But then British Guiana, very far away, but a good reason to travel. Yeah. There must be fun in research too. Huh? And Sri Lanka is very close. So I think these 4 countries that I managed to visit and also discuss with friends, not only about cultural diversity, but also on ethnic relation, poverty, national security, social inclusion, sustainable development goal, and all the cliche words and the term that United Nations use. To what extent this term actually being understood by the people who are affected by it. So I think this is the famous trickle-down effect. And because there are so many filters, nothing finally trickles down. I think this is what we see wherever we go. And it's interesting for me that it's not only Malaysia going through this difficulty, but there are other countries going through the same difficulties. Even though our historical trajectory we shared for a long time under British rule, but it sort of shaped itself differently as we went along. As a result of independence, revolution, or if you go to African countries, you see different story. So I focus on these countries. So if I can share with you, how do I look at this country? What is the generic concept that enabled me to make comparison? So there is this famous sociologist called C. Wright Mills. I read his book when I was second year in Universiti Malaya. At that time, I cannot make any sense what he was trying to say. His book is called Sociological Imagination. So when it's imagination, I thought this is all fake, and this is all mimpi lah, this is all dream, all this. But he's a hippie, but a professor. So you can imagine why he is always in his imagination during the hippie period, with his big motorbike. I know his history, life history. His daughter wrote a book about her father. So it's quite interesting to me. He introduced a very simple 3 concepts to make sense of who we are and what we are. First, he said we must know the structure. Structure means our social relationship. We cannot live alone. No man is an island, says Lee Kuan Yew. Yeah? So, in a way, by not connecting to your neighbor, you are connected. To put it quite simply. You don't want to know your neighbor, but his number is 234 and yours 235. Your house. So, for me, you don't want to see him, you don't want to listen to him, but you are connected. So, to him, what connects us is the social structure. And this social structure must be located in particular history, because it changes. It's not the same. Pre-May 90, May 9th to 018 can be different before and after, but some don't believe it's different because it's same faces, see? So it's interesting for me that social relation, social structure actually will be influenced and shaped and reshaped by history. So he says, watch. You think social structure is fixed? No, it's not fixed. It's always moving. It's for you to decide what happens and who made them move. What sort of historical background that makes them move? Is it revolution? Is it an evolution? Is it some personality like Hitler or Pol Pot that changed the whole thing? Or something else, he said. And finally is the biography. Biography here is, don't get mistaken, it's not English literature or Malay literature here. Biography simply refers to the 3 or 4 components of society. The individual, the family, the community, and the society. These are the 4 sociological components of any society, he said. So, the structure and history will affect and shape the life of the individual, the family, the community. But don't underrate the individual, the community, and the family can also reshape society. You ask Lee Kuan Yew and family. Okay? Only now he wants to change. VG Lee wants to change with a new leader, for example. So don't underrate family in Malaysia too. Anwar Ibrahim, Karpal Singh's family, Lingua Eng's and family. So Malaysia has got a lot of family influence in the way the world shape us and we shape whatever there is in Malaysia. So in this sense, I find what C. Wright Mills suggests to us as a classical analytical tool is very necessary to enable us to make this comparison. So therefore, from there we can see what is the difference between Fiji and Malaysia. Historically, Fijians, who was brought to Fiji? Not the Chinese, mainly the Indian. So all these are interesting historical events that shape and reshape Fijian until today. And the same thing with Malaysia. And the other important thing that I use to make sense of what we are and who we are in this country is to use these three big concepts: society, state, and market nexus. The society is the big component that we are a part of. But the state exists for what? To organize us. And the market, or the commercial relations, the economy, is for us to live. Or we live off the economy. Now, these three components oscillate in terms of importance. Sometimes the state influences the market. Sometimes the market take over the society. And you can see now consumerism, how the state, how the market takes over our life. Because we live around malls. We never knew malls before. But now we have more malls than we can afford to have. Why? So we have to explain this. So the relationship between society, state, and market shape. Whether in religious terms, I have seen a massive Islamic, in Indonesia, televangelism, a la Christian in America is huge in Indonesia. And some of them came over to Malaysia and make a lot of money too. So it's interesting how market encroaches and becomes part and parcel of organization or business plan, they call, in the way religion is being propagated. There's a study called the New Religious Movement in Japan. The book is coming out at the end of this year. I wrote a chapter on Arkam, but the rest is all on Buddhism. So it's incredible, the global organization of Japanese new religion, the Mahikari, the Soka Gakkai in Kuala Lumpur, the 5 floors building that they have. And they have a university in California. I don't mind going there. There's no winter there, so we can go to San Francisco. So it's interesting that they are business organization, first and foremost. Of course they are religious, but they survive and expanded around the world through a business model. I've read their documents. So it's quite interesting from learning from them how to organize incredible corporate groups that they have subsidiaries around the world. So Soka Gakkai Malaysia is a company established in Malaysia, not in Japan. And they have a university in Tokyo, Soka Gakkai University. Every year they send their students, 30 their students, to come and listen to some lectures on ethnic relations in Malaysia. Because Japanese is now going through this difficulty, not enough labor, they have to import clever people from Iran, from Iraq to do the electronic industry. So now they're beginning to face this problem, quote unquote, of diversity. So you cannot say Japan is homogeneous society anymore. There are people who are wearing all those interesting things on their face. So, cover up their face every Sunday around Tokyo. If you go to Tokyo on every Sunday, you see thousands of them, the workers. So now they've come to Malaysia. And they landed in my institute, asking, how do you survive in this diverse Malaysia? So now, we don't look east, the east look at Malaysia. That much I can claim. So, the look east may be an old idea. The new idea is the east searching for answers in not west, in the Southeast, you know. So I think it's interesting, these changes that we are going through, that I'm watching as I do my research. Even until last week, you know, people from Waseda University is coming. They have been franchised by the Ministry of Education to learn how to deal with integration, not assimilation. Because Japanese is famous for assimilation. You want to be with us, you learn Japanese. Learn our religion, learn this. Learn how to eat Japanese. That part is not difficult. But the most difficult part is to start with Buddhism, to start with Shintoism, to end with Buddhism. That is the difficult part to explain to a lot of people who want to become Japanese. So the Korean and Japanese are different. So this is why until today, until yesterday, we are looking at this. For me, I'm looking at it all the time because, you know, this manuscript, PhDs or master's thesis that I have to read, I begin to learn some of this stuff, which I don't read in the newspaper, but I read in this massive thesis, explaining to me what's happening somewhere else. So this is what I want to share quickly because what time? I have to stop 1 hour. Huh? Okay. I've done 15 already, 15 minutes. Now I want to show you this diagram. This diagram is a comparison between Malaysia and Sri Lanka. And over how many years? 20, 30 years, or probably 40 years. The bottom is a Sri Lankan experience of ethnic violence. And the top is the Malaysian experience of ethnic violence. Because peace is defined as the absence of violence. So this is the benchmark for Malaysia. This is why the election question I mentioned. People ask me about why isn't there an ethnic conflict during our election. So which means that even the general public and world population and interest is always related to violence. So they will see peace or no peace, violence is the boundary. So that is why I think in the title of my table or diagram I said, from violent conflict to stable tension to social cohesion, the evolution of Malaysian state of people's relation, structure, history and biography is shaped by this violent conflict that we have had, and then stable tension, which means that there's still differences and difficulties, and therefore ISAT was declared not ratified because people are afraid. So we have gone back to stable tension. Everyone is trying to use the opportunity to create, increased temperature, I call it, in ethnic relation. So in that sense, it is interesting to watch this diagram to see how Sri Lanka has lost more than 100,000 lives. And Malaysia did too, but punctuated in a punctuated manner, not a consistent manner. For example, 1964 was basically in Singapore. In July and September of Singapore, there was ethnic riot in Singapore. And it was still in Malaysia at that time. So, but it's not included in our history book, it's included in my diagram. Because Singapore was in Malaysia at that time. So it's quite interesting for me that not all this data are available publicly in our history books and whatnot, because I always believe history is about remembering and forgetting. Sometimes we forget to remember what we want to forget, or otherwise. So it's interesting how our history book is a story of what we remember and what we forget, not what really happened. This is how I see history books. But never mind, I've got A for my history, so I pass in my LCE at that time. LCE. So it's interesting for me to use this as a guide, making sense of what happened in Malaysia, what happened in Sri Lanka, to see where we are heading. I think in terms of cultural diversity, in terms of nationhood, and so on and so forth. I think Angie, you have seen this diagram 20 times. You don't have to see it again. But after all the research and thinking and writing I have done, I've done extensively. Some of the work have been read, and I ended up being called up to think how to formulate this national unity blueprint. That's it's interesting experience. The blueprint was embargoed by the BN government, but it was made available by the PH government. So it's now available, no more embargo, 2015, it was a cabinet, a Malaysian cabinet endorsed it, and then I waited and waited. When can we read this? When can the public this? So last month or 2 months ago, last month I think, the cabinet said, okay, we can publish this. So it's not available on the web, Jabatan Perpaduan Negara. So that's what we did for 18 months, trying to figure out how do we figure out this country, how do we talk about national unity. Probably we have to talk about social cohesion, not unity, because unity is what we dream, cohesion what we achieve. And we have to do a lot of work at reconciliation to make sure we reach whatever we want, what we call it, unity. Yeah. So from that experience, that was a very valuable 18 months that I had in my institute among our friends and academics in Malaysia. How do we begin to make sense and frame what we are in this country? So if you are given a chance, it's just a chance. You go for a conference somewhere. This is what happened to academics. I don't know about the rest. But you go somewhere, present a paper, and then you have reception, you have tea, and then they ask you, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm from Papua New Guinea. And then I said, I'm from Malaysia. What are you doing? Research on food. And they look at me, is that important in Malaysia? Yes, food is very important. Everyone agrees that's the best thing in Malaysia. So we kept on talking about this. But it's not food that is really uniting us. The agreement to agree food is important. That makes us together. Because not everybody can handle thosai and all the stuff, And not everybody can handle sambal. But food, the generic term that we all agree in Malaysia, food. Now, what food? The second question becomes problematic. And then the third level is more difficult, because then we have to look at recipe books, because there's no writing on Malaysian food academically. So, what do we do? How do we inform research in Malaysia about food, except to show them recipe books? Has anyone studied? And then we look at the medical faculty. Yes, about nutrition. Who wants to know about nutrition? I don't want to know about nutrition. I want to know how sambal is made. What is the history of sambal? The spices involved. Can we trace our history through our food? Can we trace the coming and going of spices and spice market in the whole world through our food? Can we do that? No, nobody wants to write that. Too difficult. It's easier to eat the food than to provide the knowledge to enable us to make sense of our food. So that's what I'm saying. When we go overseas, they ask us all these questions, and we know only at one level. After that, it's, excuse me, I have a friend that I have to meet. So all these excuses, I've seen my friend and a civil servant who went to conferences with me. They're very smart guys. I feel I'm stupid because I will answer every question and they will be giving themselves excuses. Excuse me, where is the gents' room? Quickly. That means they have been to many conferences and cannot answer questions. And they know how to get away from it. So these are things that encourage me to look, okay, I'm given this task to lead a team, to think of how to create this blueprint for national unity. So the first thing I went through my mind is, there's no unity in this country. So if there is no unity, what do we have? That's how I introduced the word social cohesion. Because, and it's not a new word anyway, the question is we have no word to explain what we have achieved. We always use the word unity, perpaduan. But there's no perpaduan. So what do we have? So I said that we must have something, but we have no term for it. That's the brilliant Malaysian. When they cannot explain, when they don't have thing, they don't have any word. So the idiomization of this exercise is very important. So the idiom perpaduan has overtaken us, denying us to make us to understand what actually we experience. So cohesion is what we experience. Things that we agree to disagree. And the things that we disagree, we will find ways to find another level of agreement. And I call it reconciliation. So we dream of unity, we got cohesion, but we still have to work hard for reconciliation. So in one breath, these three words redefines unity in Malaysia. So that's how I started. We have to redefine this word unity. It's not enough. Everything is perpaduan. That's why it's a bit like one Malaysia this, one Malaysia that. Everything one Malaysia. You cannot. I said, there must be differences in life, in society, in the social relations, in history, and the biography of the people have changed. So I came to the conclusion there are only two major frameworks that actually shape us in this country, if you want to understand. So you can add another one if you want. During the seminar, at the end, you want to add another one, you can, or 3, 4, 5 more, but I have only 2 to offer. So at least 2 on the table. So anyone who wants to take these 2, go ahead. Who wants to add on, please do so. Now, 1 I call the integration framework, not assimilation. I will explain why. And 2, a decolonized configuration of modern state and nation framework. I will also explain. This sounds very confusing for me at first, but now I hope I will be able to explain to you quickly. Yeah. Now, the integration framework. There are 2 historical choices to manage diversity for decolonized countries. Remember, I'm talking about decolonized country. I'm not talking about America. I'm not talking about Japan or Korea. It's about decolonized country, which means that countries have been colonized, like India, Sri Lanka, Guyana, Fiji. So that's why I'm there. I'm looking at a decolonized experience in these countries. So there are only 2 choices. You either manage diversity through assimilation or you manage through integration. Indonesia decided to have assimilation. Closed Chinese school, Chinese newspaper, semua bercakap bahasa Indonesia. Tukar nama, Rudi Hartono. I don't know whether you know Rudi Hartono. I remember. And then later Lim Swee King. So he maintained his Chinese name. Everyone has to change their name. Ahok, the governor in Jakarta, also has his own beautiful Indonesian name. Sampurnama something. So I cannot imagine who gave his name, but it's a beautiful name. So Indonesia have decided. There's no other way. And those, at that time, I remember Sukarno received 4 ships from Japan as part of the blood money after the war. And they used the ship to send many Chinese back to China. I remember reading all the stuff. And you know why I remember very well? Because they sent back the best badminton players from Indonesia. And then China became the champion of the world after that. How stupid they are. But never mind. I remember for a different reason. So that's why I remember. I'm not political at that time. I'm more interested in all Eddie Chung and gang, you know. How come they become world class? And then suddenly China became world class. And then I discovered they're all Indonesian-speaking Chinese in London at that time. So they were speaking Malay, Bahasa Indonesia, not English. They cannot, because they just came back. And they grew up in Indonesia. So it's interesting to me how assimilation was a choice. But because of demographic reason, Malaysia cannot apply the assimilation, even if they wanted to. Because the population is 50-50 almost in Malaya. Not in Malaysia, but Malaya. And you cannot do that. There was already established Chinese school, English school, Malay school, religious school, and so on and so forth. So Razak report become very important in that sense, the model of integration. So integration, the only problem with integration is there is always differences being highlighted, because that's why it's called integration. It's not assimilation. You integrate what you can. You agree to what you can. So we agreed with 1956 with what I call the first integration platform. Yeah, top down, bottom up, and we are very famous for bargaining, negotiation, and mediation. That's what we do all the time. Like in the last few days, I remember the bargaining, negotiation, mediation. As a result, I watched in front of my eyes how this happened, and I was called up many times by different people. What do you think I should do? I said, there's nothing we can do, because a lot of people don't read this stuff. I said, you know, even though those who can read English don't read this stuff. First of all, Malaysians don't read, I said. Let alone ICERT document, I said. What ICERT document, you know? If it's document how to make more money, they will read. That's it. So I'm not being cynical here, but I'm just being myself, I won't read those stuff, which I think is a bit difficult, legal language I never understood, So I got to get another friend to explain to me, so it's waste of time. My attitude, But I think I'm not much different from many Malaysians in that sense. So I explained to them that the first thing you should do is to create literacy on ICET. What does it mean? First thing you do is to get ITBN, Institute Terjemahan Negara, to translate the document so that everyone can read in Malay, at least the national language, and then there's English. Then you start explaining what is inside this. The people who make decision are people who only read part of the English or they are interpretation. So there was a battle of interpretation for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I was watching this battle, everyone saying, including ex-Lord President and all this, they are no different, whether A side or B side. They are all interpretation. And suddenly everyone joins in because it's like, Malaysia is fantastic in that sense. When you have demonstration, they brought their grandmother, the father, the children, and because they supply of free water, free nasi lemak, so they have demonstration from Kelana Jaya right to the Taman Burung. So everywhere, like marathon, station, ring station, there's Malaysian demonstration. It's a family business. So, and when this I said issue, it's the same. Suddenly, you can see tents around the places. Why? They are selling something while you do demonstration. I mean, that's Malaysian, totally Malaysian. Now, if you go along Jalan Tun Razak in front of the Tabung Haji, it's clogged with people selling stuff. The SMEs selling all the same batik in 5 different stores. So it's interesting for me to see our economic development at that level. So this is the result of the integration. We push in what we think is good and acceptable to everyone. Then it's not acceptable, we pull it out. So everyone can blame the government or whatever, but I think they make sense. When the temperature is becoming hotter and hotter, you have to make sure that we have a lot of water. We have excess water in Kuala Lumpur because of rain, but they don't help to reduce the ethnic relation temperature. So this is why I think in some way integration can be inclusive, or integration can be sometimes conflictual. But how do you manage this is the key. Yeah. So I find that in Malaysia we have to have this a common idiom in order to make all of us understand what we are doing. Like for example, perpaduan. Okay, fine. I would say there's not only perpaduan, there is kesepaduan and penyatu paduan. So it's only unity, cohesion, and reconciliation. So perpaduan has to be redefined. In one breath, you have to say these 3 words. Perpaduan, kesepaduan, dan penyatu paduan. All of them with the root word padu. So we are not really going outside perpaduan, but it's perpaduan, kesepaduan, as Asma Haji Omar says, our linguistic expert. Perpaduan is what we achieve, kesepaduan what we are trying to do, and penyatu paduan is more effort to go forward with this kesepaduan and perpaduan. So it took me a long time to discuss with her to get myself correct in Malay that I'm not trying to fool the people. I said, that I think I know what I'm saying. So it was interesting because the first people who will be fooled will be the cabinet, Malaysian cabinet, because they have to endorse this. So that's the first group of people I have to convince. There are 3 words that you have to learn. So I have the advantage or the privilege of presenting the Malaysian cabinet on 12th of August 2015. First, it was supposed for 35 minutes and 1.5 hours because suddenly everyone in the cabinet has got something to say. So the Prime Minister said, we have to stop. It's only agenda number 1. I said, there are about 15 more. And then I left and I laughed. I said, is this how they run the cabinet? It looks like Jatuh Kuasa Kemajuan Kampung. I said, So it's interesting, but they speak when they know. But when they talk about budget, billions, okay lah, because they can't count the money. Too big. So that's my impression. I might be wrong. So blame me if it's wrong. So, but it's interesting for me. So what we need is integration platform. In fact, we have created a lot of integration platform. In fact, we have social cohesion before even the European came. Otherwise, how do you explain Chiti? How do you explain Peranakan in Melaka? How do you explain the existence of this hybridity or diversity or whatever you want to call it? How do you explain that? So we have had social cohesion, the phase before the European came and after the European came. But when the European came, they have colonial knowledge, they redefine us, define and rule, then only they divide and rule. See, this is what I see. They define us who's Malay, Chinese, Indian, then, okay, we divide and rule. Through what? Through policies. Okay, the Malays, Malay reservation enactment. Then, Malay have got its own definition. In Kedah, Malay include orang Siam. So it's interesting. So we think there's only one definition, but actually many definitions. But I can't say that too loudly because some Siam people will be claiming that I'm now in Negeri Sembilan. Can we have Siam in Negeri Sembilan too? So the Negeri government said no. It's only Minangkabau here. You know? So things like that become complicated. So I think in many ways, the integration platform is necessary as a term to explain the part, a space where we all agree, a certain time, at a certain history, we agree. We agree to have Malayan Union for a few months, and then we disagree and have protested, then we have Federation of Malaya. So we keep on moving, creating what I call integration platform. This is what we are good at. So if you want to explain to the rest of the world, so how come Malaysia has no election? Oh, we have. Election is an integration platform. Why? Different parties got together in coalition, they are never alone. And that is integration platform. Coalition is the way we put all our differences together for the moment or for a particular period or for a particular reason. This is how, that's why Malaysia is so good. We're able to create this integration platform. Either long-term, short-term, it depends. Like Sekolah Wawasan. For only a few, I don't know how many years, Sekolah Wawasan, it becomes Sekolah Was-Was at the end. So we don't know what's happening, and we can't see them. We see they don't play in the field, that they've been these beautiful schools. Now they want to revive this idea. So I was called to, they consulted me and said, what do you think about Sekolah Wawasan? I thought it's over. What is left? Sekolah Was-Was. I said, you know, we never had one. So Mazli didn't like it. He think that I'm making fun. I said, no, you tell me one. Which is the most successful one? You don't even have an award for the successful one, I said. So that, in Malaysia, everything got award. Self-award. So that's one way of creating integration platform, by having many awards. So everyone has a prize to take home, what do you call this? A little certificate. That's why, are you producing any certificate for everyone coming here? Better not, huh? I don't want a certificate. So it's interesting how good we are at creating this platform. And I think the search for integration platform will never end, because that's our strength. We always want to create integration platform. So if the Star likes my article, probably on Sunday they will publish it. It's about what happened to ISET and my comments about integration platform, about stable tension and all stuff. So for me, bargaining, negotiation, mediation is something that we do all the time. I remember every time we open the university, there have 10 people not happy, they got 4A, 4 flat, everything flat, but they fall flat. Why? They cannot get into medical faculty. And so they get angry. So do what we see. In 3 days, they got the place. What happened? What happened? The application for 3 months, nothing happened. When they made BC, 3 days they got the place. Somebody must be doing the negotiation. Somebody must be, bargaining. Okay, you don't give. You take these places for Malaysia, Chinese here, Indian here. The JPA is Jabatan Perundingan. So you organize, you get agreement from them. They are the one who give the scholarship. So they have to be involved. So because they have to provide 10 extra scholarship. So there must be some negotiation. There must be some mediation. Parents, in between, Wakil Rakyat and all this stuff. That's what we do. But we don't recognize that because we are so busy looking at Bazaar Ramadan. for our answers. Food. We don't look at what we do in our behavior, daily behavior. We look for this. We negotiate. We request. I mean, in town, in cities, how many of you really seen your wakil rakyat? Never. When you have problem with your longkang, you see Dewan Bandaran. You don't see wakil rakyat. Try it in kampung. Lembu beranak pun panggil wakil rakyat. It's different. It's a different situation. So nothing in a way, bargaining, what we bargain, what we negotiate, and what we mediate in the rural area, in the urban area are different things. And this is the beauty of Malaysian life. I call it a beauty. People don't see it because they don't feel it's important. But it is very important. At least after this you will realize how important it is. Before this we think it's just another event. And the other thing that I want to raise, how good we are, integration platform, is that it's not only top down, it's also bottom up. You go this today and tomorrow in all the new housing and housing project or whatever in Kuala Lumpur, Taman, full of people pitching up tents for weddings. So street wedding is a big event in Malaysian society, especially among the Malays in the urban area. Because they used to have all this kampung space and suddenly they don't have. So what they have is in front of their house, the road. So the road become the kampung. So then they have to involve their neighbors, Malay, Chinese and Indian. What do they have to do? They have to see each of them and ask permission. How they ask permission? By inviting them. Smart, isn't it? Huh? Eat as much as you want, sit as long as you want. Because their makan time is from 11 to 4. So whoever wants to eat, especially those who goes to banana leaf shop, they can eat as much as they want for $4.50. In Penang before was 3 ringgit 50 cents something. You can eat as much rice and eat and whatever else you can have. And you can sit there and eating until the owner chase you away. But this is interesting. There's no Najib involved directing them what to do. There's no Anwar Ibrahim involved. I think these people are full of initiative. They need to for survival. So they do it, and it is an event and a tradition now in Malaysia. So in fact, it spin off into many types of businesses. The catering, and then the, what do you call that? The tents and all this stuff. They have to have. And now it's not cheap. Last time it was the military tent. You know, I don't know where they get it from. Somebody must be working closely with the storeroom, the military base nearby. But now it's a nice white tent that looks like Hollywood, you know, in the movies. They have it. Chairs, table, foldable. 12 o'clock at night on Friday. By Saturday, 7 o'clock in the evening, it's finished. All packed up. It's incredible efficiency. So I think Malaysia knows what to do for themselves. So we don't underrate ourselves. Our initiative, our ability to negotiate with everybody else and to find a space. And I think it's something that I don't know. Nobody is giving any award to street wedding because everyone is having a street wedding. So hundreds of them. So nobody can win. Yeah? So there's no award. So I once suggested to the minister, Perpaduan that time, Joseph Kurup. So why don't you award? Why don't you have an event called street wedding? Celebrate street wedding in Malaysia as a new post-Merdeka, whatever it is, post-colonial, to borrow from the people in the literature, post-colonial activities that we have called street wedding. And the same thing how I find the third space, the third place. Third place. First place, house. Second place, work. Third place, where do we go? In Malaysia. Mama, huh? There you are. Of course, some people go to Kopitiam and all this, but our survey in Klang Valley said that 98% of the youth will prefer to go to Mama. Why? It's the most advanced place. They got 10 TVs with different football games from 3 Premier League in the world, French, Spanish, Italian, and British, English Premier League. They have what they call this, you can order any food you like, They cook anything that you want. I remember watching this guy ordering chapati and egg. I said, how is it going to happen? I was very curious. How is it going to come out, chapati and egg? I've never heard this before. So I sat there and waited. Apparently it says so simple. Have the chapati, plonk a fried egg on top. So this is initiative of the highest level. And this is what Malaysians can do. And I never underrate this, because we only go for the big one, celebrated in Padang Merdeka and all this stuff. I said, no, it's every day in a mamak shop. They celebrate. And I met a pakcik, this 60-year-old pakcik. I said, what are you doing here, pakcik? Tak ada TV ke kat rumah? Dia orang tak nak tengok bola lah, dia tengok drama Korea, kata dia. So this pakcik is displaced from his home that he made, but he's happy. There's a mamak shop that saved him. Now, these are episodes of personal life, what I call the biography, influenced by the rest, but actually they can also influence how we see these things. So this is what we have in Malaysia, integration platform. Now, the next one, in all political science book and sociology books, we use the word nation-state. Not separated, nation-state. For me, in decolonized countries, nation-state is one thing, nation without state, and state without nation. Okay, when you talk about nation-state, Brunei, Melayu Islam Beraja. So that is what their nation-state is. They are clear about the state, and they are clear about the nation. In Bangsa Moro, or the Kurdish nation somewhere else, nation without state. They got nation, but they have no state. And Malaysia, we have state, but without nation. We are struggling to create our nation. How? Malaysia, Islam Malaysia. So these are the prospective nation that we like to have. That becomes the grid for our political struggle. Because the state, we inherited from the British. We still have British laws. We still have lawyers who use laws from India in 1866 to compare this case of Curi Lembu or whatever it is, It's interesting when I go to the court and I read the court judgment, a lot are reference to cases in India and Calcutta and so on and so forth. We never, so the state which has a boundary, has a rule of law, and has a constitution and citizenship. So the three elements, citizenship, rule of law, and boundary. And that we have inherited from the British. It's not our creation. There was a time when the earliest part of our judiciary, they're all wearing that little kambing stuff on the head, I don't know what it's called. It's interesting. But now must wear songko or something else. So we change a bit, but not necessarily all of it. So in the way I see it, you have to separate state and nation. And we have a state, we don't have a nation. We're struggling to have this nation. And we use the political framework to have our struggle within to create this nation. That's why we see what we see in the last few days. All of them representing various ideas what nation should be. And we shall continue in Malaysia that way. So, this is what I said, I wrote long ago. What we have in Malaysia is state without nation and competing nation of intent. We have all our belief that this is the nation that I want. If you read the Setapak Declaration of 1967 by DAP, it made it very clear, I want a Malaysia in Malaysia. So they explained, very long document. So it's the same with PAS. I want an Islamic state. 1951, they broke away from UMNO. Why? Because they want an Islamic state. So for me, the notion of nation is still, we are still debating about it, what we want. And that's why we decided to have coalition. Coalition is the only platform, integration platform, where we can debate about it. Because without a coalition platform, nobody can rule this country. That we know. So it is interesting for me, the contested nation of intent is always there, people always argue, and one thing is certain, at the moment, after reading the interview in The Economist between PH leaders and people from the magazine called The Economist, I remember they wrote that whatever is the nation that the British agreed to endorse with UMNO and the election was a Malay-led plural society as a nation of intent. And that's what it is until today. So they have to reaffirm that every time. And that's what the fear is, because they thought the Malay-led plural society was the one that was agreed as a nation of intent. But there are some people questioning, not necessarily so. We are different now. We should be like this. So this contestation has spilled over into many areas. I said it's just one element that managed to poke this and bring it up again. So it's interesting for me, if ISAT became an issue in the general election 14, I think the result will be different. This is how I see it. So, not that I'm for that side or this side, but I'm always this academic who Anwar Ibrahim called Lembu. Because he's coming, that's why. So for me, this notion of Malay-led pro-society still holds strong in this country. Even Mahathir is not campaigning about multi-racial. He's talking about bersatu, about his becoming a better UMNO. So you can see that, the irony of all this. That's why it's a good name called Pakatan Harapan. I think that key word is harapan. And that's what it is. And that's what they are for us in some ways. So this is where I can see this contestation will go on. But it is within this contestation, inclusiveness and moderation is discussed amidst diversity, difference, and dividedness. So we may talk about inclusiveness, we talk moderation, but it is amidst diversity, difference, and dividedness. So how do you do that? Only in Malaysia they have chapati with egg. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Oolong. First off, I would like to welcome His Grace, Reverend Julian Lau, Archbishop of the Catholic Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur. Thank you, Your Grace, for making time from your busy schedule to attend this symposium. Now, I would like to call upon Reverend Dr. Clarence Devadas, Director of the Catholic Research Center, to present token of appreciation to Prof. Oolong. Prof. Oolong, I would like to invite you on stage as well. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we will now like to invite you to proceed outside for some refreshments. We will begin the next session at 11:15 a.m. Do have a lovely tea break. Thank you.